All systems go.
So we should start?
It says we're going live. It now says that we are live on YouTube for our January Westlake Charter School board meeting. Board President Golick, you have the YouTubes.
Okay, thanks. So I'll start off with just our standard disclaimer. This meeting is being held pursuant to Executive Order N29-20, which authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. Members of the public are encouraged to observe and participate in this meeting. So there are further instructions at the end of our agenda, but essentially if you could send an email to admin@westlakecharter.com and put in the subject line what item you wish to comment on and keep that to 250 words, and we'll do our best to make sure that comment gets read into the record. And if by chance we've moved beyond an item or we don't receive it in time, we'll go ahead and make that part of the packet and send it out to board members. With that, Amy, will you please take roll?
Sure thing. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Nancy? Nancy?
Yes.
Josh?
Madly.
Rochelle? Vasa?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Okay. Celebration. So I'm just, because with the way this is showing, I don't have everybody on my screen, so it's easier if I'll just go in roll call order for this particular one, which means I guess I'll go first. My celebration tonight is a personal one. For the first year ever, I'm having to pay school tuition. It's not all that's made out to be, but I did pay it off this week for the year, and so I'm feeling highly successful, and I wish to celebrate not having that hanging over my head. So with that, Sean and then Nancy.
Okay. I will celebrate COVID vaccines and the fact that Evan just got his second Pfizer vaccine on Monday. A little bit of side effects overnight and not feeling great on Tuesday, but he's back to normal, and that will help keep him protected from all of the many COVID patients that he is seeing on his shifts. And as a side note, his hospital is actually offering COVID vaccines to adult people who live in the same household as their healthcare workers. I would assume with the idea that if I get sick, then he has to stay home and look after me, and they don't want that. So if I can't get it some other way, then I'll get it next week by driving to Clear Lake.
Are they going to let you do that even though you don't live in the county?
I believe so. But I don't know that Evan would have thought to ask that, so that's a very good question, and I will make sure to have him check that before I drive to Clear Lake.
I only mention it because it's all county by county on the processes, so it's completely possible that they've got a different allotment directly to his facility and that they can do it their way. It's very interesting. At some other meeting, we should definitely put up the flow chart, John, on vaccines because it is hilarious and mind-bending. Having just gotten my training on it on Tuesday. But I only mention that, Sean, because that would be a deal breaker for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point. And I mean, I know that that earlier in the week, they said that veterinarians could get it as part of a revised definition of healthcare workers, but now they've walked back on that. And now they're saying that veterinarians can't get it. But there's some who've already gotten it, and some who made appointments to get it and then got there and were told, no, go away, and some who made appointments and were told, no, you can't have it, but you're here so you can have it. So it's a bit of a mess.
We're all doing our best, right?
I know.
It's a challenging time. We're just doing our best. Thanks for celebrating that, though. I'm really excited for Evan.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Nancy and then Josh.
So I will also go with the personal route. So my kids, my two boys who returned back to Indercombe High School last week, started finals yesterday, and they have felt very confident, and I'm happy for that. And I get excited tidbits because I'm home and they're home, of course, and so they get very excited to tell me how well they did, and when the score, and because of the timing of it, the scores are posted almost immediately. So immediate feedback is awesome, and they're pretty excited about it. So it's all good. It's all good in the Kong Vasquez household.
So you don't have my 4-week experience, huh, Nancy?
No.
No. Aren't you lucky? Josh, and then Vasa, because Michelle hasn't been able to join yet, right, Amy?
Correct.
So so Josh and then Vasa.
Okay. John, I want to celebrate you and your staff. Just keep plugging away, and from what I can tell, the distance learning is working. Doing a great job with it. I haven't heard any complaints from anybody, and I know it's not easy, and I just want to celebrate you and your staff for continuing to do what you do day in and day out. So thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. I'll spread the word to the staff.
Please do.
Josh kind of stole my my thunder too, but no, from top to bottom, I mean, our classified staff, our instructional staff, our support staff and our aides, but I look across. I've been really reflecting actually as I think about my career and where it's gone over the last decade or so, and I look around at the teaching staff that I work with every day, and I'm just all consistently blown away by. I look to my left, I look to my right, and I'm like, these are legit teachers that know what they're doing and do such a good job every day. Totally fun to work with them, and then also I'm sure John's going to celebrate this in his celebrations today, but. We've had a lot of social justice oriented kind of work going on in a committee with teachers on campus. And then also the impact committee has been really reflecting and learning and growing and setting goals towards more equity based action in our own work. And then at professional development, when we started to get into these teaching tolerance standards. And, just on a real practical level, this standard says, I feel good about for an 8th grade student, I feel good about my many identities, and I know that they don't make me a better than people with other identities. Just one little tidbit of the type of knowledge that we want our kids to know as they leave Westlake that I'm comfortable with, and I know my many identities, and they don't make me any better or any less than anyone else. So I think those are the kind of work that we're doing in different parts of the school while we're in the middle of a pandemic, continuing to focus on what's important.
Yeah, that would just to tag on real quickly, John, I thought it was really great during the coffee talk too, when you did the identity piece. And that did jump out at me, that it was so nice to have a learning opportunity as part of the coffee talk. I mean, we're always learning, but it felt like a moment of growth in a year that sort of felt very closed in, and so I appreciated it a lot. Ashley and then Shannon.
So Vasa, you kind of segued into mine a little bit. The Social Justice Committee met today and celebrated how great all of the coffee talk and all of that went. And I was just going to celebrate that team. Before several people on that team were even a Westlake team. They were a team of teachers over summer going, this is important. We have to start talking and reading and getting informed. And it was just exciting to be in that team today and see in a really short amount of time how much that team has done, which is just what Westlake does. But we've got teachers got a whole host of new books to read with or to their students, and teachers are signing up for book clubs, and we have professional development for parents and staff and certified, all the people. And John's smiling because I'm sure he's probably going to talk about it more today. I know he is. But it was just it was a great meeting, and I just felt like that team is getting a lot done in a really short amount of time, and it just speaks to who Westlake is. And when something is of the utmost importance, we run really, really fast at it and make sure we cover all our bases. So that was really exciting. And then I just wanted to also shout out another team that I have the privilege of being on are the super smart, amazing people on the positive parenting workshop team that we'll be having in just a couple of weeks. And I've got to meet with both those people. So I kind of felt like I was on campus today because I saw so many of my colleagues, which doesn't happen very much. So it was a good day over here in my school. So that team of staff and teachers is got an amazing workshop planned for parents with so too much information, because that's what we do, and finding how we can make sure we just give the teachers or the parents everything, all the resources possible to help them in this hard time. So I'm excited to see that happen in just 2 weeks.
Thanks, Ashley. Shannon, and then Jed.
So sticking with the equity theme, I guess I'll celebrate that. I've been in a couple of meetings. I mean, obviously for the past year, but specifically today, where we've been talking about just the different in the changing role of public transit that we've learned over the past year. And I think I'm just really excited about Caltrans and a lot of our partners really rethinking the opportunities and the responsibility we have to the public, rather than just providing commute-oriented, white-collar commute-oriented services that are, very frequent in the peak when all of us go to work, but not so frequent when we have different types of frontline and essential workers who are the people who have really had to continue taking transit during the pandemic and putting their lives at another risk, being on a bus or a train or waiting at a bus stop. And so even though that may not necessarily be where we get the most revenue, really rethinking what our role as a public transportation funder and provider and operator is, and making changes to accommodate more people, which ultimately is good for mobility anyway. And then my other little side shout out is I am going to be most likely joining the Sacramento Area Bike Advocates Board. And when I was talking to their director, we were just talking about some other stuff, and I was asking about their committee structure, and I was like, I'm actually on this school board. And she was like, I'm like, you're going to ask the question everyone asks. You don't have kids, you don't live in Thomas, and you're not a teacher. Why are you on a school board? And so we started talking, and she was like, oh my gosh, I have my PhD in charter education. I'd love to talk with you more about this. And I was like, this is not the thing I thought we'd have in common, but awesome. Yeah, let's talk about charter boards and charter education. And I'm excited to take a lot of the great lessons I've learned from this board and our committee structure to bring that over to Saba.
I love spreading the knowledge. I really do. Jed, and then Amber, if you want to celebrate.
I guess I'll pass over a state budget that defies gravity, and I'll pass over a U.S. Secretary of Education nominee way better than any of us thought we were going to have. And focus instead on today is Howard Fuller's 80th birthday, and I will celebrate Howard, and I will, bring to folks' attention, his great book, No Struggle, No Progress. If anybody wants, there are very few people in the world who I have learned as much as I have from Howard Fuller, and there are very few people who I think have made as much progress on behalf of the children who need public education better than Howard Fuller's contribution has made. So I just surface my admiration for him.
Thanks, Jed. Amber, and then Steve.
Hi. I want to celebrate just Westlake continuing to do these kind of extra things, right? It's like a lot of schools are just really focused on just getting through each day, and Westlake is doing these extra things, like the positive parenting workshop, the after-school live clubs that I know lots of kids have been enjoying, and then being able to socialize in them. So I just think it's, it's great to have all these extras for our families, and I think it's appreciated.
You're there.
I just want to give a shout out to Amber and the WAVE team. Driving on campus earlier this week, we usually have a few tables out of distance learning kits. Earlier this week, we had a few tables of distance learning kits. We also had a number of tables Olympic triathlon recognition bags out there for students. And so just a big shout out to Amber and the Wave team for putting that together and getting those out to students. It looked awesome.
Hundreds and hundreds of little handle bags. The picture was just, you couldn't see the end of the picture. It was so great.
Yep. It's great.
Amy, if you want to celebrate, and then John, I'll leave it to you if you want to do one now or if you want to save it for your report.
I always love to celebrate. I will celebrate that my daughter, who works in event office, was able to get the Madeira vaccine today. And so she was super excited, and I'm super excited. Moderna, whatever it was. Not the Pfizer, but the other one. So I'm super excited and very proud and very relieved because she is in a situation where she's been exposed like 4 times already. And so it's good that she will be safe. And then I got to visit with Miss Patel's kindergarten class this morning, which started out with a book read, a really great book that I bought this over the weekend, turned into a whole conversation about puppy rescue. And the kids were amazing and telling me about all of their things. And it's just always great for me to be able to hang out with kids.
Love it. Hey, I'll jump in and just do a quick celebration that the excitement around the high school is real. You guys, we as a board have been talking about the high school together since 2014. And even before my time, I'm sure. But this moment right now, you can feel it in the air. The kids are talking about it. Parents are emailing about it. Admin, teachers, every meeting I'm in, people are talking about the excitement around the high school, and it is becoming real. There's so much good work happening. So just a shout out to this board for your vision and for everyone involved in the project. It is coming to fruition right before our eyes. And I know this is a tumultuous time in the world, but we should be celebrating this vision that's coming to reality in front of us in such a fabulous way. I'm sure I'll talk more about it tonight.
I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I mean, if there's any group that can overcome challenges, whether it be the largest rain year ever in building a campus, or whatever you want to call it, this is the right team to have to overcome. Just the sheer perseverance of this group is phenomenal. Yeah, that brings us to board comments. Do board members have any comments for matters not on the agenda that they wanted to address tonight? Doesn't look like it. So we'll move on to public comments. John, can you please check the email? I'm
looking at the email now, and I see no public comments.
Okay, well, we'll check back again throughout the evening. So if you're out watching, you still have time. That will bring us to reports. And Amber.
Hello. So I just wanted to go over kind of the stuff that's been happening with Wave. In December, we had a big donation to Joey's Food Locker, which was wonderful and just very appreciated. And hopefully we can continue to, we're going to do a sock drive with the Great Kindness Challenge soon. So we're going to continue to give back to our community and find ways to get our community involved, our Westlake community involved in the Natomas community. Then we did the Dos Coyotes fundraiser, which was extremely successful. My husband picked up our food, but I heard that the entire place was just full of Westlake parents. So that's awesome. We made some money, got a lot of people into Dos Coyotes. So we're going to do another fundraiser soon. That way we're just talking to a few different businesses, and we might have more options since things did open back up. I think our coffee talk this week was great. Like Hope said, I loved John's piece. I think it was really great to get our community involved in that and let them know the things that are going on behind the scenes that they're not aware of. And it was just it was a great talk. There was a lot of positivity. I just love our coffee talk. So it was great. I am partnering with Mrs. Kayau and Mrs. Kravoy on the Great Kindness Challenge. So we're doing the sock, and then we're going to just really work on spreading kindness really across Natomas. So we'll be coming out with a few different ways to do that. But I'm excited about the Great Kindness Challenge. And then we are planning a couple of virtual events. We are planning a trivia night. And then we're also, I'm very excited about this, planning an international festival. So we're looking for families to share their culture with us any way they feel comfortable, whether it's a video or a recipe or just some pictures anyway. So that's what we're really going to push out right now, because we want to, keep our Westlake traditions alive and do it virtually. So I'm excited about the International Festival. And then, as I mentioned before, I'm really excited about the Positive Parenting Workshop. I think it's fantastic to find ways to encourage and support our parents at home. So that is my report.
That's all, huh?
That's it.
Sorry, your list of things you're doing is tremendous, so thank you so much. Yeah, it deserves a round of applause. Shannon with the Charter Impact Report.
Yes, so right at the end of the year, we met and talked about finalizing our goals and really, I think, made a shift towards moving away from creating frameworks and studies and actually just trying to get towards some sort of equity literacy and a process for defining the work and just actually like getting to work. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's lots of smarter people who have been working. Not that you're not smart, but there's lots of people who are smarter in this particular area of work who have done a lot of work. We can just pick up one or more of their frameworks and processes to start engaging and actually utilizing these existing and common frameworks and then act. So we're finalizing our goals to accept next 2 weeks, whatever, this month at the next meeting. And then for the things that we're looking forward to this month is we're approving the goals. John is going to bring some data to us to start mining through so we can start actually figuring out what our first piece of action is going to be, mostly looking probably internally at like what our data just tells us right now. And then a report out on the staff PD that I'm sure we're going to get an update on and that others have talked about today, and building on that for our own professional development, and then probably kicking off or joining staff equity book club. So lots to do, and I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, I had a hard time doing it in a committee report for development on Monday because we did so much, and it was right before the holidays, and so it was. Thank you for summarizing it so well. Michelle joined. Yay! Nancy, the development update, please.
So we actually were able, since our last meeting, I think we've met twice. We had a workshop in December to discuss our initiative for the freshman class for the trip to Southern California to the Museum of Tolerance. We had Emily attend our meeting and was able to give us additional information and just overall, just gave us really a framework to work with. So we had a 2-hour workshop to do a ton of brainstorming around messaging, as well as starting to develop a project plan. This last Monday, which was just a few days ago, the committee met again to start putting together assignments and whatnot. So we've been hard at work working on our first True Development Initiative fundraising goal, as well as ensuring that we are also continuing to express gratitude to our existing partners. Again, we were able to show you the development partner site. I hope that you've had an opportunity to go out there again, but we've also been kind of putting together some process and timelines around the updates and continuing to do the work of the development committee. So super busy. We get a lot done, which is wonderful, and we have lots of ideas and feedback. So it's always a delight to work with this team.
Thanks, Nancy. Sean with finance.
Okay, so we met in December, and we continued our discussion on high school furniture, which there is an item in consent which is related to that. Not so much related to our discussion, but really related to high school furniture. Certificated compensation continues in discussion, and then we had yet another closed session, real estate related closed session. The end. Can't talk about it. And that's all I have to report.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. We did not have a governance meeting tonight, so no update, which brings us to the executive director's report.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I've got a...
You're muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. I tried to unmute myself on the wrong screen. Hi, everybody. I've got a few slides for you today. I do have a couple of different reports. My executive director's report includes an update that everyone's been kind of alluding to tonight, and that's that social justice piece. So I'll blend it all together and see if I can get off stage in a goodly amount of time here. Obviously, I'll start with some celebrations, then talk some strategic actions and some updates. Feel free to chime in if I missed any of the celebrations. Let's take a look at what we got. You know, it feels like a million years ago because we had winter break, but our holiday party, our little staff winter holiday party, where our art teacher Leah Jackson led us all on a mindful art project. You can see the art project on the screen there. It was absolutely a real success. Amber, you talked about celebrating Westlake Charter School for continuing to do these cool things, even though we're in distance learning. You know, we didn't want to give up on the opportunity to have one party that we could all be grateful for each other, and I think we pulled it off incredibly well. Mrs. Jackson did some amazing work for us. We had some fabulous cookies provided by a local baker whom you all know and love. Thank you, Nancy. It was just a real success and a real celebration in a moment of a really challenging year. Just want to celebrate, you know, our spirit days. I love these like pajama days. I know someone said recently every day is a pajama day because we're in distance learning, but I love seeing our community tweet and throw out on the Facebooks, these spirit days. It just lights me up every time. We've reinstated our middle school fish bowls. You remember these are when we bring our middle schoolers together and get them working as if they were small focus groups where they're talking about issues that are relevant in the middle school. And, even though we're in distance learning, it's no different. These kids came together and shared what they like about distance learning, what they don't like about distance learning, what they're looking forward to when we come back to school, and what they're worried about. And they gave topics for the next fish bowl. I just think it's a great opportunity to really honor that shared leadership piece all the way through our student population and honoring the student voice for sure. Amber, you alluded to this, but I may just want to shout it out one more time. Our collaboration with Joey's Food Locker was fabulous this year. Thank you to everybody for donating food. Joel Schwieger, who's the founder of Joey's Food Locker, he came on to the Coffee Talk with Amber and the team and spoke a little bit about his program. Then we did the food drive, and Joel reached out to us and said, hey, thank you, Westlake, for always being such a supporter of Joey's Food Locker. They fed over 32,000 individuals in Natomas in this last year, and Joel told me that was more than they had fed in the last 5 years combined. So it's been a really tough year for our community, and in fact, I know that Joey's Food Locker is still looking for donations now. So if anybody's out there within the sound of my voice, you can go right over to Natomas High School, out toward the football field. You'll find Joey's Food Locker back out there, and you can drop off food donations there this week. And then this is just a cool celebration. Another great thing that's going on at Westlake Charter School. Even though we're in distance learning, all virtual, we've got these virtual after-school clubs and activities. I think Mrs. Caillou said, and maybe Amber, you'll remember from Coffee Talk, I think she said over 150 students were involved in our clubs and activities after school without a single one of them stepping on campus. We have parents now volunteering for round 2, and those will be launching in a couple of weeks. But parents will be chaperoning some of these after-school clubs. Just really a cool, innovative, creative way to keep our kids engaged and wanting to be part of school. So lots to celebrate right now at Westlake Charter School. Let's talk a couple of strategic actions. I think I only have 2 tonight, and then I have some updates. So the strategic actions, I want to tell you a little about our application pool that is open for the high school. We are in the thick of it right now. As you know, on Facebook, we've been advertising, we've been getting out there saying, hey, if you want to be part of the greatest high school in America, now is your chance. We have 7 open positions, and we have over 100 applicants in January for 7 positions. That's over 100 and counting. So the applications are rolling in. I think we have over 30 applications for social science alone. There just is a high interest in coming to this high school, and I think I know why. I mean, I think Westlake's an amazing place to work, and the word is out. We also have interest from several current staff members, which is phenomenal, right? We want to bring some people from our K-8 up to our high school to keep that culture going. And then we have just flown one purposefully internal position. We're going to have a student support services TOSA position at the high school. but that definitely is a position we want someone to come from our K-8 and go up to the high school for that position, because we want that position to really make sure they're shepherding and carrying along a lot of the processes, protocols, and procedures from the K-8, the way we support students on 3 levels of, tiers of support up into the high school. So that's a very exciting position that just opened up internally yesterday. If there's any questions, thoughts, or concerns about applications or hires, please stop me, unmute, or wave at me. Otherwise, let's keep on powering. Let's see. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what everybody's been talking about. We've launched a 5-month series around this reflection, action, transformation work. This 5-month series is anchoring our work in the teaching tolerance social justice standards. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it later as to why we selected this particular series and how it's coming to fruition. But last Wednesday, all certificated staff went through a 2-hour professional development as step 1 of the next 5 months. Now, all of our classified staff yesterday went through a similar training. It was much shorter because they couldn't demand of them as much time as they demanded of the certificated staff. But for the first time in many years, we had all of our classified staff in one place getting a similar professional development to our certificated staff. So now all 134 members of this staff have entered onto this journey talking about reflection, action, transformation, and how it plays out through the social justice standards. Now, we also did like a 15-minute version of this professional development for our parents through Coffee Talk. And as Mrs. Houston and I looked at the analytics, I think this morning, I think we had like 78 people had watched our Coffee Talk, which means, okay, that's 78 parents that understand the journey that we are starting through social justice, the social justice standards. And tonight, I'm going to give you a presentation in this session that I'm going to try to keep to 10 minutes. But I'd like you to be educated along with the certificated staff, the classified staff, and all of our parents so that you understand over these next 5 months, month by month, each little stretch of the rubber band that we're taking together. And I'll certainly invite you to be part of larger trainings if you prefer to be. But I'd love for you to get a little taste of what we're all talking about so that we all arrive where we're going together. We're also going to give you a special peek behind the curtain, because not only are we doing a 5-month series with our staff, but we're launching several book clubs. And I'm going to invite you, if you would like to, you can certainly join one of these book clubs as well. We have a couple of phenomenal books that we've selected, and I think they're going to just really help establish a foundation for a transparent way where we can all say, well, let's start this journey together. So very excited about that piece, and tonight I'm going to bring you some of that right at the end of my updates. Let's dive into some of the updates. We've got a CSSP, bonus points for any board member that remembers what CSSP stands for. Comprehensive School Safety Plan. I know you was on the tip of your tongue. I saw you. The Comprehensive School Safety Plan. Oh, Hope is like, yes, I do. We had a couple of sections to update every year, right? We updated the drill schedule, the fit inspection update, who's been CPR certified, those types of annual updates. Section 10, the family handbook, gets updated annually on the CSSP. We had one section of the emergency protocols we thought was really important to review. We did a very solid read on the pandemic and epidemic response section, and it was a fascinating read, right? To read this thing, it was like, oh, yeah, somebody took the time to write a whole page about pandemics, and here we are in the middle of one, and it all still reads very true. It says you should work with your local agencies like the Sacramento County Public Health, which, as you know, we haven't been doing so. That's one of my other computers starting up over there. Thank you for the noise. Let's see, what do we got? Okay, so next steps. We have a copy of the revised CSSP on file here in the office, as we always do. If anyone would like access to it, we can make that available to you. We will also be having our safety team meeting in February, so we can go over the updates officially and log that we met. Then I'll be seeking board approval of the CSSP in February, and then we will file it with the Natomas Unified School District in March, so it's on file. So I just wanted you to know about that process. It is underway and right on track.
Hey, John.
Yeah, Hope.
Is that meeting still Mrs. Wells, Mrs. Erickson, and myself?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Sorry, thank you.
Yep. Outreach and lottery, I mean, this is kind of an exciting update, right? Is that there's so much excitement around applications that we received and the outreach bringing in kindergarten through ninth grade applications. So right now, as of 1/14, we have 1,184 applications versus 1,143 in 2020. So we're slightly ahead of 2020, but we do have ninth grade packed in here. So if you take the ninth graders out, we're actually behind a couple applications to where we were last year. But as you'll recall, if you backpedal 2-3 years ago, we are like 400 applications ahead of where we used to be. So it's very exciting. We will guarantee that we will have over 1,000 people on the wait list when all is said and done, which is really a benchmark for knowing that our program is highly sought after, and that's very exciting. Outreach is going very well, and we're really focusing heavily on the ninth grade, and that's going very well as well. We are in N Magazine in December, January, advertisements for K-9 and high school standalone. We're also in the Natomas Buzz. They're doing advertisements and social media from their channel. We've also done a lot of postcards. Remember, we haven't walked around the community and posted these up in businesses because of the pandemic, but we wanted you to see how many postcards have gone out. High school only, to the 95833, the 34, and the 35. We've dropped 2 different sets of postcards for 3,000 postcards that have gone out just about the high school. Then we've sent out to West Sac, East Sac, North Sac, another 4,000 just about the high school. And then our kindergarten through ninth grade, so that's kind of double dipping on the high school. In the 3.3, 3.5, and 3.4, we got 7,500 postcards. So we had to knock down a few trees, but we got the word out for sure through direct mail. And we think it's every time a set of cards drops, we see a little bump in the analytics that say, more people are applying. So it seems to be doing its job. One thing we've really relied on heavily this year, more so maybe than any other year, because of the pandemic and because we really want to use digital medium, is some Facebook targeted advertising. Mrs. Batten's become an expert of Facebook analytics. She's having a ton of fun on the Facebooks. And here's just some analytics that you can see. So you can see above how many postcards we've sent out, thousands and thousands of postcards. But with Facebook, you get to see the analytics. Our Facebook posts over a 30-day period ending today, 30-day period, we reached 36,839 people were reached through Facebook targeted marketing. Now that's not nationwide because we target right in our local region. We target zip codes in our region, and we've had 3,767 post engagements. That's the little thumbs up, the heart, the smiley face, or the comment, or the reshare. So the Facebook targeted marketing is really helping us get the word out there, and we think it's something we probably keep doing going on into the future. So good news about the lottery, it's filling up. Good news about the application pool for teachers, it's filling up. So the word is out, and we feel like we're doing pretty well. Stop me if you need me, otherwise I'll power on through. I want to give you a quick FUA update. We are at, Jed.
You have information about where the applications are coming from for the high school kids. Are they coming from mostly Natomas? Are we getting applications from outside Natomas?
Jed, maybe I'll bring the map back. We have a map. Steve takes all the addresses into a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet drops a little pin on the Google map so we can visualize where they're all coming from. We're using that partly to target whether or not we should drop more postcards in certain areas. So right now we're predominantly from the 95835 and the 95834, which means we're probably going to push one more load of postcards down to the 95833. We do have some representation for sure in the 33, but we haven't seen a lot outside district. A couple. I don't want to say it's not, but it's not predominantly outside the district. We are majority of the applications are in district at this point. However, we did just drop a series of postcards that are going to kind of work the fringe, and we'll see what happens. If we get some farther north Sac, if we get some west Sac, if we get some east Sac. So we'll see. I'll bring that map back for you though, Jed, next month, and you guys can see where they're all coming from.
And can you remind me, if a student applies from outside of the district, are we only going to offer a seat? Do they stand behind absolutely every other Natomas Unified person, or do they have some standing in the lottery to be able to get in before a Natomas resident?
Yeah, no. If you're outside of the district, you're end of the line. You're the last in line for sure. But depending on how it flushes out, depending on how many people are in the pool, and depending on how many students from our 8th grade matriculate up to the 9th grade, we might make it down the line. We'll see. Plus, we have to assume that if you have 100 people say they're interested in our 9th grade, I would assume many of those same families will have also applied at NP3 and Natomas Charter School. However, if you get a bunch of people to apply from out of district and they're way down on the list, those first 100 people might go to Natomas Charter or NP3, making more spaces for the out of district folks if they apply. So our real objective is just to fill that list up and get it as long as possible, because we want all the kids, whoever we can get. We want to be at full capacity. We're really targeting 125. We know we can come all the way down to 85 on the kind of our budget line, our minimum. We want to have 125, and we're willing to go up to 150, because in our FUA we've negotiated some flexibility around, like, hey, we know we're going to be 500 when we max out, but it doesn't mean we're going to be 125 per grade level, because we know that maybe from freshman year to senior year, maybe families move or things happen. So every other charter high school we talk to says you should really think about overloading freshman year. So we're just trying to make that list as long as possible, and we'll maybe load all up to 150.
Well, just as an equity matter, I think it's becoming more apparent to us that the implosion of Sacramento Unified, it is among the most irresponsibly managed public school entities in the United States, and it is, just one footstep out of Natomas and you're into that school district. Yet we have an admissions practice that forces us to put them at the end of the line. Yeah. And but I think it's also open to interpretation. What does it mean that you shall have an in-district preference? That does not necessarily equate to you must give those kids must stand at the end of the line. They only have space or have a right to enter if there aren't enough people who have applied from the district itself. You could have it as, hey, they have a preference in terms of a statistical advantage in the lottery, but they don't have to stand at the end of the line, right? These are the kinds of things that, from my perspective, this is where the tire hits the road as far as equity goes. Yes, I think there are all sorts of other things that are important, and I'm impressed by a lot of things that you guys are doing. But when you know that you are right next door to one of the greatest moral challenges of Northern California, it is right there, right? What is our responsibility to do something else? So I'm going to keep, pushing back, or not pushing back, I'm just going to keep surfacing this. Yeah. Hey, what more can we do? I don't think why would Natomas Unified not like the idea? Heck, it'd be more kids coming from outside their district. They got to keep more kids in their schools. But this is something that I think we should become even more aware of as Sacramento goes through what are just terrible.
Yeah, unfortunately, just to push back and I love the idea, because I agree that there's some challenges in our Sacramento region. I would just want to make sure that we're aware that when we're talking about equity and opening our doors to people who are in districts that are struggling, that we open those doors, and the people who walk through those doors were actually the people that were struggling from those districts, not the people who had the ability to get in their cars from those districts and drive over here every morning. You know what I'm saying? Like it seems like it might be likely that what would actually happen is people would leave that district and come over here to our school, which I would love to have them. However, I don't know that the most at-risk student from that district is the one that would inherently jump on the bus and come on over here. But I would hope.
But hey, John, on that note, can I cut in real fast?
Yeah.
And that was what I was raising my hand about. We still, Jed, pull free and reduced lunch preference first before we pull. And so it is potential, right, John? That the out of district, we don't qualify it on that preference.
We do. The last charter that we approved said Natomas Unified School District and free and reduced lunch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a change that was made a couple years back. because I think that in our negotiations with the district, because they built us this $32 million beautiful facility, part of what the district's argument was, hey, we'd like these $32 million worth of facility to go toward the students whose parents voted for this bond. I think.
I remember that edit now, right? Because anytime we touch these preferences, we have to go to our authorizer, right? It's a material revision to the charter. And so those always end up being such a process. Not that there's any negativity there, but right, there is that back and forth discussion. And so that's always just a trick. Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
And Jen, it's a good. I agree with Zach. I agree with the outreach. We did drop 4,000 postcards, as you can see on the screen, and some of those postcards went to the exact neighborhood that you're describing. So I hope we get some penetration there. That would be phenomenal.
And I wasn't suggesting that we would be neutral on FRL status either. Obviously, because we could have a bunch of people coming from you name the neighborhood, right? Where we would not be getting the students who are the priority, right? But I think if we feathered together an FRL preference and reduced somehow or resequenced such that those students who are outside the district who are FRL stand a much better place of getting in. I think it's something that's worth us revisiting when we can.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. Now, if we feather those two together, thanks for the clarification. Any other questions, thoughts, or concerns on this team? Cool. Yeah. Okay, FUA update. We've had a very, very productive couple of weeks with the facilities use agreement. I know Josh knows what FUA stands for now. He mentioned that in the last meeting. Our facility use agreement, we've had very productive meetings with our liaison at Tomas Unified School District. We're working with our partners already to prepare for next steps as we anticipate this facility use agreement getting buttoned up theoretically in the next 2 weeks. We're working on the short term, working with painters, ordering furniture, measuring spaces. On the long term, we're already working with YMC and some funding partners on potential next steps regarding how we might get to that long-term parcel and facility type of conversation. We anticipate the FUA will be done as early as this next month. So I would anticipate that each of you would see this FUA before our next board meeting. At least that is my hope. I just wanted you to know we're working on that. Some thoughts on the reopening of schools. I know we didn't say that we would talk about this at great length at this particular board meeting. However, the governor came out on January 27th, I believe. I'm sorry, December 27th. And that there's some new language in the water that's worth at least acknowledging at the board level. You'll also see on the screen, as of today, the new guideline from the California Public Health came out regarding opening schools. So just a couple of things on that. The governor, says that the $2 billion will be allocated to safely reopen schools, and that plan sets a new threshold for opening schools. Remember, on the blueprint for a safer economy, the daily transmission rate has to be in the red zone, which means it has to be below 7 new cases per 100,000 inhabitants of a county per day. So we're looking for the number 7 per day per 100,000 to get us reopened. Well, this new set of guidelines resets that number at 25. So we're still going to leave the purple tier for the blueprint for a safer economy at 7, but schools can reopen. And inside this document, they offered some research as to why the number 25 made sense. So we are now waiting for the case rate in Sacramento County to get to 25 new cases per day per 100,000 people. And then we'll be able to consider reopening. The plan really includes starting with kindergarten through 2nd grade, then expanding K-6. 7th and 8th grade still are not going to be allowed to reopen until the county's actually in the red tier. So this reopening schools safely, this governor's plan, does not really include 7th through 12th grade. That still belongs on the originally tiered plan. One of the interesting caveats in this is that they believe it's safe to reopen schools with this case rate as long as weekly testing is a part of the conversation. Now, this document that came out today didn't seem to make weekly testing look as mandatory as it was maybe seemed to be in the governor's original proposal. So we're all going to find out what that means. Is it really a mandate, or is it a suggestion? Is it unfunded? Is it funded? So we'll talk more about that as we know more. But know that these are the two big points that we should know. The new case rates at 25, and it includes weekly testing for students and staff. Here's the chart from the epidemiology website that kind of shows that little bump on the left is back in July when we thought cases were really high, and we all went into kind of a shutdown mode. And then you can see on the right is the big mountain the spike that we're incurring right now. I just want to remind everybody that the 10-week time period from July 21st to October 13th, those 10 weeks allowed us to go from a 20 new cases per 100,000 down to 6. It took about 10 weeks to drop 14 points. So that's how long it took to come down. 10 weeks, 14-point drop. We're now at a current case rate. We're actually at 53 today, but we're going to call it 50 for even math. And that means if we go 10 weeks out, it takes us out to March 12th, we would be all the way down to 36, which still wouldn't get us to the 25 we need to open. So again, the reopening plans, kind of Jed eloquently said it last time, hey, don't get distracted. You'll know when it's time to open. We'll know, but it seems like it could still be a little ways off. I just wanted you to kind of know about that. Here's what we know right now. Sacramento County Public Health Department is currently not accepting waivers. So I know we had the waiver conversation last month, but there are no waivers being accepted anymore. They said no more waivers. We're just going to go with this new case rate at 25 governor's plan. We know from a staffing perspective, which we've all talked about a couple of times now, both Roseville and Folsom Cordova have had to close several schools that were previously opened due to shortage of staffing. You may have read that in the paper this morning about Roseville High. We also know the reopening plans are receiving some criticism from several statewide stakeholder groups. There's some leadership groups, some superintendents of large districts who are saying these reopening plans with testing seems tricky. Some bargaining groups are saying, hey, we'd prefer to wait till we get in the traditional purple. So there's still a lot of groups out there larger than ourselves making decisions about how this all could come out. I want to give you a cost of testing analysis that came from Dave Gordon, the superintendent of the Sacramento County Office of Education, in a meeting that we were in with him last week. He said, okay, well, we just got a new contract with a new testing vendor. And so that's why, the governor's going to offer this $2 billion, but it looks like it's mostly going to go to testing, because if we get $450 per student at Westlake Charter School, that's $450,000. If testing costs $40 per test, well, if we opened up K3 plus 134 staff, that's 582 tests a week, which would cost us $23,000 a week to conduct these tests. Over the next 15 weeks, if we opened up on March 1st, it would cost $350,000 for testing. So that's just opening up K3. That's not talking about 4, 5, 6. So just to look at the numbers, if those are the actual testing dollars or expensive testing, that could be one thing that we're going to have to consider when the time comes. And the last piece is the Sacramento County Office of Education has stated that their pool of superintendents and also all the charter leaders that were on the call when we were on the call last week all kind of talked about the challenges with focusing on testing and putting all of our eggs in that basket may distract us from the importance of really working together around the logistics of vaccine distribution. That most of the leaders in the county all say, hey, let's focus on vaccine distribution, and then we'll cross that bridge into testing. And so this next slide talks about the vaccine. It's kind of a celebration for us. The Sacramento County Public Health and the Sacramento County Office of Education are working together. We're in a weekly call with them, and they're working on a county-wide vaccine rollout for educators. So they've already reached out to all the districts and charters, and Natomas Unified, NP3, Westlake Charter, and Natomas Charter School have all decided to collaborate on this. So we're collaborating with our district partners and our charter partners. We've all rolled up our numbers to one big list. How many employees, how many staff members, how many vendors we have on campus. so that hopefully the county can get an initial distribution for our whole region and then take care of our region all at one time. On our list, we've included all of our employees, and that includes all of our substitutes who worked for us this year to date, as well as our vendors, like our custodians, our food service workers, anybody who steps on this campus. And so we wanted just to be sure that that took care of everybody. The initial news from Sacramento County Public Health is promising. They're asking that school nurses get vaccinated now because they might be able to help in the distribution of the vaccine. And we are part of Phase 1B, which includes all the employees, and that is likely to happen in February. So if the COVID numbers are starting to trail off, and maybe by March 1st, our employees have their first vaccination, we may be looking at school reopening, and that would be very, very exciting. So this just indicates we rolled up all 134 of our employees and vendors in that list. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns about school reopening or vaccines? Is that Nancy? Sorry, there you go.
No, it's okay. Just a really quick question.
Yeah.
So since the governor has included the 65 plus population, please someone correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't sound like they've really made changes to the phasing other than just adding the 65 plus. So just that 65 plus population is probably going to, I would imagine, impact February timeline. Has anybody else heard that? Or how is that taken into consideration?
John, Michelle might know more than I do, but based on the presentation I had, Nancy, so part of the reason why it's expanded to 65 plus is to give greater flexibility that when shot clinics are started and whatnot, that vaccine doesn't go to waste. And so by increasing the vaccine pool or the candidates for that pool, we have a greater shot of making sure every vaccine dose that's available enters a human. But the counties do have flexibility in how we allot it, as do healthcare facilities and hospitals that receive their vaccine directly. So I don't have a doubt that they're planning for this and taking into account what SCOE's asked for and what SCOE needs, and will plan accordingly. Counties have been working very hard to address the needs of the communities. And so yes, it may impact it, but I think it will impact it in a different way, where they're probably planning separate vaccine clinics or separate processes, a number of paths to try and get the vaccine out as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And it totally, and of course it is my expectation that there will be an increase in speed in getting vaccines to people, hopefully starting next week. And so, with that said, I know that we're saying February, just wondering, how it will overall get impacted and whether or not it was taken into account when we're saying February now. So that was my only question.
Yeah, thanks, Nancy. It's a good question from the Sacramento County Office of Education Superintendent. The plan for Sacramento County Public Health and SCOE was that if we were to act as one county unit just in the education sphere, that we might be able to organize ourselves in a more efficient capacity than having the state and the county roll out through the education groups. So that's why pulling together all these superintendents and all these charter leaders saying, hey, if we all work together, maybe we can increase the efficiency on our own. So that theoretically was the hope. Although we're going to meet with them tomorrow, Nance, and if I hear any updates, I'll let you guys know.
I mean, the other qualifier, Nancy, I would just give too is, yes, I'm sure the goal is February. It all depends on what we actually get delivered, right? And so that's my only other caveat. Like, I'm sure February is a solid goal, and it may be sooner, right? If there is a release and a lot more vaccine comes in, maybe they'll be able to pull it off sooner than that, right? And so I would just remain really optimistic that the right plan, especially with the new alert system that I understand is coming out, that big things are happening. Like, there's a lot of reasons to be excited.
Yep, totally. And I am the first one to be excited about it on lots of different fronts. So I appreciate the concern.
John, I think Ashley was raising her hand.
I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Patel.
I assume, but I always want to ask when I have an assumption. There's so much talk about this single dose method instead of double dose, and you're depending on which one, it's 80% instead of, and all of that conversation. So in hearing that conversation so much, I just wanted to clarify or confirm for everyone listening. Do we know the County of Health, Sacramento County of Health, their Office of Health, they're planning for the double dose for this whole sort of initiative as it goes?
There's no change, Ashley, to the CDC guidelines. So while that may be in discussion, and Johnson & Johnson is close to having testing done on a one-shot vaccine, as far as I'm hearing in my public health world, there's been no changes to the guidance at this point. So the plan would be to plan on a 2-dose vaccine process. What might change is how much we hold back to make sure that second dose happens right on time, because there's maybe some leeway there. But as to, I think, what your question is, no, nothing's changed that way.
Okay.
Very good. Very good. Michelle, you correct us if we're wrong, right? You'll like make a face or something.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Don't leave me hanging, okay? If I'm doing this wrong, please correct me. I would hate to be misinforming anybody watching.
No, you guys are doing great.
That's awesome. All right, thanks everybody. Any other questions, thoughts, or concerns? What do I have in the next part of the show here? Oh, hey, Steve, you want to jump on and do the this is some good news. Jed wanted to celebrate this. This is the anti-gravity budget.
That's so much money. You get $1, you get $1.
It has been a fascinating 12-month cycle. So you think back to January of 2020, and that Newsom released his budget, and it looked great. And his budget that he just released last Friday, it looks great. What happened in between then is kind of what you want to put in the cupboards and hope the dishes don't fall out on you. It's kind of a bit of a train wreck, but the budgets are looking great. And again, he proposed his budget last week. I'll be attending the school services conference tomorrow. We'll get more details on it. But at the onset, we know he's proposing a COLA of 3.84%, both to the LCFF side of the house, and also a small COLA to the special education funding side of the house. So all great news. He's also looking at paying off some of the deferrals that he had built into the budget, the state budget at least. Of course, deferrals are an IOU issued from the state where they say, we're going to give it to you, but it may be 6 months from now, so it hurts our budgets and helps their budgets. So it'd be great to have that paid down. We're also, of course, looking to pay off some of the rainy day funds, which is essentially the state's savings account that they dipped into. So really just some good news in the budget. And again, we'll get more details tomorrow. And then a second interim budget will go to Finance Committee the end of next month and come to the board in March for approval.
Thank you, sir. Any questions, thoughts, or concerns for Steve? Good.
No, having watched the presentation, I was impressed. The governor did talk for 2 full hours on this budget. There was a lot to break down, Steve, so I can't wait to hear how tomorrow's discussion goes, since it will be much more focused than his was. But I will admit to texting Steve, I had to ask, where is all the money coming from? I'll just share that because I just had a moment where I was just I got lost in the numbers. So thank you, Steve, for always being a trusted resource and being willing to answer any board question.
No problem at all. Yeah, tomorrow is a busy day. You've got school services and CSDC presenting their views on the state budget. So we'll have a lot of data next time around.
That's good stuff. Okay, team. That concludes the traditional portion of my report. I'd like to just walk you through some of this reflection, action, transformation work that we've been talking about. I'm launching with our staff an equity series for the next 5 months, and I'd like to take you along with us on the ride. And so I anticipate this to be 10 to 12 minutes, but I won't apologize for taking your time. I think it's really important work. It's been work that's been very well received by our staff thus far, and a lot of hard work is going into this on our staff side. And I kind of want you along for the ride, and so please engage along with me. we talk about equity. This is a great little resource here. This chart is put together by Dr. Zaretta Hammond, who wrote the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain. This conversation on equity is like, well, there's multiple types of equity to talk about when we talk about schools in particular. And Zaretta Hammond gives us these 3 types of equity to analyze that are really relevant for us in the edu sphere. The first type being multicultural education, which focuses on celebrating diversity. Then there's social justice education, which says while we acknowledge diversity, we also are looking for equity and inequity within the systems of our schools to ensure that equity is delivered for all children. And there's this domain of culturally responsive pedagogy. And Dr. Hammond claims somewhat that without the previous 2, you can't really arrive at this 3rd column. And this 3rd column is really evidence-based, research-based methodologies for making sure that our historically marginalized students are successful in school. But this requires a paradigm shift. It requires a mind shift that takes place if you're really deeply diving into these first 2 frames of equity, multicultural education and social justice education. Well, what are these things that we're talking about? Multicultural education, a really good example of celebrating diversity, embracing diversity, recognizing multiculturalism. Our Westlake Charter School International Festival, our place in the global world being woven into our curriculum, our recent diversifying of our classroom libraries through making sure that the curriculum acts as mirrors, windows, and sliding doors. This is a great example of multicultural education, but not necessarily a step into social justice education. As we're launching this 5-month series, we're going to be stepping into this 2nd column. We're going to be stepping into this conversation around equity as it applies to inequity, and the social justice standards that we're going to unpack today have 4 key domains. And tonight I want to talk about the first domain, and it is identity. What is identity? How do I identify myself and others? The second domain is diversity. If I understand my identity and accept that you have a different identity than me, then we can talk about diversity with being multiple identities. If we understand identity and diversity, then we would look at justice. How do we know, how do we recognize that within our own identities and the diversity amongst us, that the systems may create inequitable outcomes? Well, that's the domain of justice. And the domain of action is, well, if we find inequity, if we find the systems don't create equitable outcomes, then what actions can we take? And that's what happens here in this social justice column. An example of this is, and Vasa alluded to this earlier, teaching students to value their own identity without devaluing the identity of others. And whether you have a fondness for the term social justice or not, because it's been so politicized, I recognize this comment right here. I don't think a single parent reads this comment and says anything other than, yeah, that's what I want for my kid. Everybody wants this. We all want this for our children. We want to teach them to value their own identity without devaluing the identity of others. And the third one, this 3rd column, examples include instructional techniques or methodologies proven to be truly inclusive. And we will arrive there. This work we're going to do is not 5 months of work. It's forever of work. But we are starting this journey because we think we're okay at this multicultural education piece. We're going to dive into the social justice education piece in a particular way and see where it leads us. And over the next 5 months, we'll do this work by diving into the Teaching Tolerance social justice standards. Teaching Tolerance is a fabulous organization that produces lots of curriculum and instructional material, but they introduce these social justice standards as a roadmap for anti-bias education from kindergarten through 12th grade. And I don't want to read this whole thing, but it says here, the social justice standards are a set of anchor standards and age-appropriate learning outcomes divided into 4 domains, right? Identity, diversity, justice, and action. And the standards provide a common language. That's what I love about them. They provide a common language and an organizational structure so we can start having these conversations about equity. In the impact team, we've talked about creating frameworks. Well, here's a beautiful framework that allows us to come together and talk about what does equity actually look like underneath these 4 domains. It says that teachers can use these to guide curriculum development. Administrators can use them to make schools more just equitable, and safe. And so it's a nice place for us to start. We're not adopting these standards. We're not implementing these standards. We're using these standards right now as a framework to create common language and start this work around equity. And we want to take our whole community on this journey with us. Certificated, classified, our parents, our board, everyone within the sound of my voice. So we're doing a little work here around identity tonight. In February, we'll talk about diversity. March and April, we will talk about justice and action. And then in May, we will actually come together as a community and reflect about what are the appropriate next steps. We've developed a glossary of terms. You have access to this slideshow on our board website. You know, we have a glossary of terms because as we dive into this work, and especially around identity, we start to reflect about our ethnicity, our race, our gender, and some of those words can overlap. What is the difference between culture, ethnicity, and race? Well, we started a glossary of terms so everyone within our community could go to these terms and unpack this learning as we go forward through the next 5 steps or 5 months. So I wanted you aware of that so you could access that as well. In this first 2-hour PD we did with certificated staff and 10-minute PD that I'll try to do with you, we'll talk about what defines identity. We'll have access to these 5 identity anchor standards, and you'll see how they play out in school across the grade levels. So what is identity? Identity is the set of visible and invisible characteristics that we use to categorize and define ourselves and those around us. We can not stop identifying ourselves. As human beings, we're constantly categorizing and defining ourselves, and it could be ethnicity, race, gender, orientation, but it can also be preferences like or passions. I'm a teacher, I'm a dancer, I'm a musician. All of these things that we use to identify ourselves are a part of our unique individual identity. Now, what's interesting, though, is that each one of our identities that we use to define ourselves or those around us immediately place us also in a group identity, right? So I identify myself as a white, male, heterosexual, married father of 3. Well, that places me in a group of white, male fathers of 3. But what we're going to learn through these standards and what the students that we want to learn in kindergarten through 8th grade is that the group identity never defines the individual. And that's an incredibly important lesson for all of us to recognize, especially as educators, because the worst thing we can do is use our perceptions of group identity to then react to students and staff around us, right? Group identity never defines the individual. And so group identity is a group of people who share one or more identity characteristic. And a person can simultaneously be part of a dominant identity group like white, and also simultaneously in a non-dominant identity group like a person experiencing poverty. And this demonstrates that each one of our identities is incredibly complex and incredibly multifaceted, and we are known to have multiple identities that make our individual identity. And so, hey, I'm no expert in this field. I'm sure I'll say certain things wrong, but as I work with our staff, we're all agreeing as a staff to allow one another to explore this work and understand and give each other the grace to say, we understand everyone's trying their best and everyone's learning at their own trajectory. And so I hope that you're able to kind of come along through this quick lesson and say, okay, I recognize what identity is, and we're saying that group identity should not define the individual. As we do this, I'm going to give you an example, and I'd like you to all engage just mentally. You don't have to write anything down. But I'd like you to take a look at the picture of the person on this screen. What I'd like you to do is just take 30 seconds in your mind and say, look at the picture, and how would you identify this person's gender, race, ethnicity, religion, marital or relationship status, socioeconomic status, this person's ability, language, parent or childlessness, sexual orientation, family size and composition, education, career. By looking at this person on the screen, which of those categories can you kind of check the box? You can identify that person. Now, before you answer, I think it's really important to recognize none of those can be identified without actually interacting with this human being. right? The iceberg is a great representation. The iceberg is what we see on the surface, but below the waterline is what's really going on. That the depth and the complexity of each person's individual identity is like the below the waterline of the iceberg. You may make assumptions about someone's identity because you see their physical characteristics and you immediately place them in some group identity, but you would be wrong if you said you could actually identify that person without getting below the waterline and really getting to know that person individually. And the only way to get to know them is to really hear their story. And that's really important for educators because we work with kids in classrooms and we can't make assumptions about student identity. And we need to train our students to not make assumptions about identity, but we need to train all of the people within our organizations to learn each other's stories. Here's Elizabeth's story. She says, "What people don't know about me is that I'm actually Arab. My family is Muslim, but I grew up Catholic. I live with my grandma and uncle and do a lot of physical care for my grandma, who is bedridden. I'm a junior in high school and a middle child. I love to act, but when I'm not on stage, I can be really shy. I have been depressed, and I come from a family that has some significant mental health issues. Lately, I've been really happy and things seem to be going well. However, my mom was just laid off and tries her best to provide for us. But we receive government assistance for food and medical coverage. Technically, my family lives below the waterline." As we go back to when we first saw this person's picture on the screen and we immediately started to make assumptions about her identity, we realize how wrong we may have been, because it isn't until she tells us her story that we truly understand how she identifies herself. And that's the most important part, is to know how she identifies herself, not how we identify that person. So why would we discuss unique identity with educators and with students? Well, identity is unique. It's known only to the individual, and it can never be assumed. And that's a really important part of the standards that I'm exposed to in just a moment, is that we need to recognize that inside of our classrooms and across our campus, within our community and on Twitter and Facebook and across this world, each identity is unique and known only to the person who holds that identity. We can make no assumptions about that person's identity. That group identity can never define a person's individuality. So it's really important that we say, while I may have a perception about a group identity that you belong to, I need to hold off and say, let me get to know you individually and understand your identity and make no assumptions. You'll never know someone until they tell you about themselves. You'll never know someone until they tell you about their identity. And this is my favorite part, that identity sharing is contextual. You and I may have known each other now for 7 years in the context of our relationship on the board at Westlake Charter School, but there may be many personal identity traits that I've never shared with you and you've never shared with me, because in the context of this relationship that we have not shared particular identities. Each one of us shares only what is safe to share in the context of our relationships, but this is the best part. Identity awareness is always present. We may not always share it, but it is always present. Every one of us, every one of our children, they walk into every single room knowing every identity that they hold, and they are not sharing identities that they don't feel safe to share. So we all walk into rooms and look around and think, is this a safe place for me to share my most intimate identities? And often the case is no, unless there is a relationship in that room. And so as educators, we have an amazing staff. Our staff get this and are getting this at a deeper level through these conversations, saying, hey, we need to create safe rooms where identities are okay to be shared and they will be accepted. And that's why talking about identity is so important, because identity sharing is contextual, but identity awareness is always present. So why discuss this? I mean, Jed, I think you talk about this a lot, and it is that if we seek to understand identities, it ensures that our perceptions of group identity is never creating a barrier for student access to equitable education. This is what happens in schools across America, and you can give it any name or label you want, but it is that assumptions about group identity and placing students in those groups without actually knowing the story of that student, and then treating students as if they weren't the unique identities that they are, that marginalizes students and creates inequities in systems that we have to be constantly guarding against. And so these social justice standards are a roadmap for anti-bias education. Every one of our protocols, practices, procedures, every system within our school should be founded on anti-bias. And these standards help establish that for our students. But while we're teaching our students, we should be evaluating our own practices as well. These are the 5 anchor standards. I won't read them all out. They're accessible to you in this slideshow. But look at just the first one. Develop positive social identities based on their membership in multiple groups in society. We want our students to develop positive identities. Look at this 4th one right here. Express pride, confidence, and healthy self-esteem without denying value and dignity of other people. Right? We want that for our students. So how do these play out in standards? This is my last. I think I got 2 slides. You probably can't read because the type font's real small there, but here's a standard identity 4, or anchor standard 4, in kindergarten through 2nd grade. They should be able to say this as a kindergarten through 2nd grader. I can feel good about myself without being mean or making other people feel bad. That's something every one of us wants for our kindergartner through 2nd grade. 3rd through 5th grade. I can feel good about my identity. So now we're starting to master the language. By 3rd and 5th grade, we understand what identity is. I can feel good about my identity without making someone else feel badly about who they are. It gets a little more sophisticated in 6th grade. By 6th grade, I feel good about my identities, meaning I have multiple identities. I recognize that by 6th grade. And no, they don't make me better than people with other identities. If we develop a school where kids feel good about themselves in kindergarten, and then by 6th grade they recognize that they have multiple identities that don't make them better than the person who sits across from them, we'll be making a better school and a better community and building a better country and a better world. And so we are using these as a framework for opening a conversation. Today's conversation is about identity. How do we identify? Our staff went through an identity workshop that I don't have time for all of us to engage in, but we sat quietly and we wrote about our own identity. And then we got in small groups and we talked about our identity and what shaped those identities and how those identities play out significantly in our daily life. And so it's a great exercise for our staff. I wanted our board to be aware of it. I want our parents to be aware of it. It's something that we want to do each month for the next 5 months. We talked about identity tonight. We'll talk about diversity, justice, and then action. I have a little bonus round for you. We have 2 fantastic books. They're going to be launching as book reads. I'd love to give each of you on the board these 2 books. If you don't already have them, I endorse them. I think they're phenomenally different books, but both are wonderful reads. This first one on the left, so you want to talk about race. The author has just a beautiful voice. As you read her voice, you will just fall into this book, and it unpacks some very uncomfortable conversations in a way that every one of us should experience. It is a positive, wonderful read. And the book on the right is really wonderful. It's written at an 8th grade reading level. It's written out as 20 little lessons. You can use them in a classroom. You can use them at your dinner table. You can use them with your colleagues. They're just a really nice way to unpack what the term anti-racism and all that goes into it is. So I would invite you as our board, if you'd like to join a book club, I'll be sending you an invite. You can click on it. No pressure because you're all busy and I get that. But if you'd like to join a book club, I'd love to invite you to a book club. And if you don't want to join a book club, but you are willing to read a book, I'd still like to send you these books because I think they will help start this journey. Okay, that was my time on that. Thanks everybody. Hope, I'll turn it back to you. Unless there's any comments, questions, or concerns about the presentation.
While you check public comment, John.
Sure.
Let's go ahead and open it up to. Are there any board members who want to make comments on? It could be anything within the executive director's report. Ashley.
I know we have a lot of parents listening out there. Our numbers are way up in attendance with these recorded board sessions, which is awesome. And I just want to highlight how amazing this information is. The social justice standards, I've been strangely geeking out on in my master's course of where can I weave that in? I'm doing a paper on ELs. This applies, because there's just so much goodness there, and so much about what we believe in already as Westlake just weaves into them. But as John said earlier, all of our non-certificated staff is being trained on this as well, which is I just want to highlight, that means all of our school aides, that means everybody in the office, and Westlake is unique in so many ways, and I would love someone to show me another school that's doing that, where every person that touches the hand of your kiddo, it has the same foundation, the same understanding about how important every one of them is. It's just unique and special, and I think it deserves highlighting.
I know Westlake truly invests in the family. And by family, that's our entire community, right? Because we just don't divide in that way. I'm excited about this work. I think, especially going into middle school. I mean, personally, right? I roughly remember what age I started hiding because of certain identity factors, right? And so the fact that we, starting as early as kinder, create this pride, not only this pride in oneself, but doing it in a way where I'm excited. I can't wait to see how generationally this work could affect the school and life experience, right? And seeing it play out with some kiddos being much more comfortable at home and distance learning because they're not facing some of those issues when they go onto campus, and how this work might play out as they come back together on campus. I mean, I know we're not necessarily doing it in the students yet, but I'm really excited about how it will play out over time. Seeing no other hands raised, that brings us to our consent agenda. We have items A through E on the agenda. If I'll take any questions or a motion to approve.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Oh, thanks. Motion by Josh, second by Sean, right? Does that sound? Yeah, perfect. Miss Amy.
Yes. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Vasa?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Great. That brings us to our first action item, which is accept and approve the requirements for graduating, or the graduation requirements, 12th grade at Westlake Charter School. John, are you presenting this?
Sorry. I certainly can take any questions that are or concerns. Leslie and Emily presented last month on this topic, but they are here tonight to answer any questions or field any comments that you have regarding the topic.
Sorry, I just missed them for a moment. I see them there now.
There you are.
So are there any board questions on this item? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
I'll move.
Thanks, Nancy. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Shannon was first. I know. I'm sorry. Josh, you got the last one, buddy. Amy, roll call vote, please.
Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Vasa?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. That brings us to action item B, which is accept and approve memorandum of understanding and confirming resolution regarding a college and career access pathways partnership between Los Rios Community College District and Westlake Charter School. We have Emily Batten and Leslie Sargent are both on for questions about this item as well. And if there are no questions, I will happily take a motion.
I'll move.
Thanks, Michelle. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sean.
Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Rasa?
Yes.
Ashley?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Emily and Leslie, for joining. I really appreciate you being available for any questions. And I'm pretty sure we'll get to see you next month, right?
And it's a very exciting night for the high school. What will you be bringing back next month, Em?
We're going to bring it back a look at course sequencing for our core subject areas. So we're excited to talk about that, kind of loop back to our detracking conversation from November, and then look at some other course sequencing for the other subject areas as well.
Very cool. I saw you surveying the students about electives. That was very exciting.
It's very exciting. Can I do a quick plug? Sorry.
You got the floor.
New Facebook ad has just gone viral, or not viral. Whoa, on YouTube. Nope, has just been posted. So jump on after the board meeting and like it, share it, comment, all the things.
Yes, to our
When
board.
is the swag coming, Mrs. Batten? I would like to buy some swag.
Yes. It will be there. We will have swag. You know we will. I've just been told by 8th graders I'm no longer supposed to say swag anymore. I'm looking for a new word for that. But I was informed by some 8th graders that when we get to high school, we're not calling it swag. So we will find a replacement word, and I will bring it to you shortly.
School us
Maybe
up.
we should call it uniform. I'm joking.
Yes,
Sorry.
I know.
I couldn't help it.
For the entire board, it is very, very helpful to our school if every time Emily and Leslie post on Facebook that you repost or retweet or share or like it or leave a comment. It really boosts our analytics and broadens our impact to families who maybe aren't getting the message. So if you're a Facebook user, please log in regularly. Go to Westlake Charter Facebook page and give it a like and a share. It's very helpful for our analytics. So we're encouraging all of our staff to do so, and we would love for you to do so as well.
And I do, Emily, really love the one that came out last night, the graduate profile. I know it's been out before, but seeing it last night, I don't know. Every time I see one of the ads, it gives me warm and fuzzies, but I really like that one. It stands out.
It's currently performing the best on our page. As John said, I'm spending a lot of time on Facebook these days, everybody. So,
I forget. Are these ads on any other social media outlets? I mean, they're on Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Facebook and Twitter.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We haven't broken into TikTok yet.
I have not either. I will confess. I hear it's fun. I'm showing my age now. So thanks.
It will suck you in.
For myself.
I feel like it's a good way to suck in young parents or just parents. I'm telling you, hours. I hate to admit it, but if I saw it, I would. We could duet it and go viral and all those things.
From the roof, like we could put you up on the roof again and record. I
Make a
so many ideas. So many ideas. Sorry, Michelle. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, if you make a cool dance, it'll go viral.
The Explorer dance.
I have a feeling the 8th graders might also have terms for that, but maybe not. They could surprise me. But
the dance.
Get him to do a flash mob, Emily.
We are in the pandemic, everybody. Yes.
They could do it socially distanced. All
Okay.
the campus.
I am taking all the notes, and we will bring them forward to our next social media campaign. Thank you all for your feedback. I appreciate it.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Batten. I didn't mean to start that.
It's great. It's great. Thank you.
Thanks again for coming. Bye.
Thanks, you guys.
Or you can stay. You don't have to leave. Oh, she's gonna leave. John, so that brings us to academic and SEL supports.
Yeah, last month we had a healthy conversation. Just making sure I was unmuted. We had a healthy conversation around academic outcomes. I promised the board that I would bring back some academic data for you to look at, and then talk about our academic and social emotional supports that we're providing to ensure our students are performing both academically and social emotionally. So I brought this this presentation for you tonight, and please, feel free to stop me as I walk through it. I presented it to staff this week so they could also see it, and it's loading slowly. I apologize. Don't embarrass me in front of YouTube here. There we go. There we go. Thank you, Google. All right, academic and SEL support. So what I'd like to do is walk in and discuss some of our distance learning outcomes. We have several data stories that we'd like to kind of dive into today. Data stories being the story of how these outcomes play out. Each one of these is in comparison to a previous data story, right? So we're going to look at the trimester 1, kindergarten through 3rd grade, BPST, that's the Basic Phonics Skills Test for 2019 versus 2020. Trimester 1. Again, we're looking at growth over time for that same test. We're going to look at some kindergarten through 8th grade reading benchmark results. Again, benchmarked to 2 different years, and the same for math. I'm going to show you a little bit about attendance as well today, and all that data is going to tell you where we think we are academically, and then we're going to dive in and look at some academic and social emotional structures that are in place that we think are helping through our multi-tiered systems of support. So, without further ado, kindergarten through 3rd grade uses the BPST, which is the Basic Phonics Skills Assessment or Basic Phonics Skills Test. And each student receives a score at the end of this test. Each grade level at the end of trimester 1 has a score that is the benchmark score. So in my grade level, if you score a 51 or higher, you have met the benchmark. If you've not scored 51, then you did not meet the benchmark. So this benchmark is very much a hit or miss. And what you're about to see are the percentages of how many students are meeting the benchmark or are not meeting the benchmark in each of these years. So at the end of the first trimester, kindergarten through 3rd grade in 2019, back when life was normal but we didn't know it, we had 73% of our students meet the benchmark for the BPST. Now, 73%, whether you think that's good or bad, or it's hard to compare unless compared to something else, but recognize that this is the foundational reading skill for our English language arts scores that become our CASP scores. And as you'll recall, our CASP scores are some of the highest English language arts scores in the region. So Westlake Charter School thinks it has a strong English language arts program, and that 73%, is our kindergarten through 3rd grade kind of foundational step toward our English language arts program. Okay, well that was in the fall last year. Now you remember, from March 12th to June 7th, there was no live instruction, all asynchronous. We were completely focused on making sure families took care of their own health and safety, that the staff were at home taking care of their own health and safety and the health and safety of their families. So a lot of instruction was lost, and we thought that we were going to come back in the fall and pick up, in regular class. But of course, we started the fall in distance learning. So now we went all of the 3rd trimester in asynchronous, and all of the 1st trimester this year, we expected learning loss to be pretty heavy. But we're not using NWEA this year because of the massive amount of time it would gobble up in our already shortened instructional day. So this is the data we have. So we look at this data critically and say, okay, let's take a look at the learning loss. There was learning loss. We went from 73% to 66%, which is a 7-point loss. Now, to be totally honest, I think we expected more. I think we expected a larger learning loss over this amount of time. As we started to dive into the data, what we saw was, we think in the second half of trimester 1, some things started to happen that started to really ramp up. Because you look at this next chart, this is growth over time. Remember, these benchmarks are based on giving a student a number. Well, the average point growth from August to January last year was 12 points. This year, the average point growth is 16 points. Exact same test, exact same benchmarks, more growth this year than last year. But we know we scored lower this year than we did last year, and what that says is we started out lower this year than we started out last year. Remember, the kids who are in 1st grade this year didn't get a full year of kindergarten instruction last year, so they came in at a deficit, and they're making up that grounds because this year we're seeing a larger point gain in this progress over time. That is a real celebration for our staff. The fact that we're single digits of learning loss, and if we keep up this trajectory at this advanced, we may actually, by the third trimester, surpass the scores that we would have had last year. And you might ask why. So why are we ever going back to school? Is it because distance learning is better than regular learning? Well, no. A lot's happened. You know, Westlake never sits still. We have adopted Foundations phonics program, which is not a research-based program or standards aligned program. It is an evidence-based program. There has been research and evidence done on this particular program that says if you do it well, it works. Well, we're doing it well, and it's working, and it's even working through distance learning. You know, so this board approved this Foundations purchase, and we implemented it, and look at what it's doing. Even through distance learning, we're seeing a higher rate of phonics growth K3 than we did last year. So we expect that this piece is on track and doing well. We implemented it this year, but we've also not just implemented the curriculum. Our kindergarten through second grade instructional aides have all been trained on Foundations to support small group instruction. So not only are teachers using this phonics program, but our instructional aides are pulling small groups and intervening. Now later on when I talk about supports, you're going to hear about us using it in ROAR. You're going to hear about us using our after school office hours, our drop-in tutorial, our learning labs. All of this, I think, is the fabric that makes up what you're about to see in these data stories. Again, has there been learning loss? Yes, there has been. Have we mitigated a lot of learning loss? I mean, this could have been horrible. I think this data shows we're actually doing extremely well given the circumstances. So it's not only that the phonics program is the end-all be-all. I think that we think at Westlake Charter School that engagement is a big deal. And engagement shows up when kids show up. When students come to school regularly and attendance is high, and they show up to an environment that feels safe and supportive and engaging and dynamic, which is what our teachers put together every single day. If you went on to the instructional visits with me, you'd be blown away by what you're seeing in these classrooms. If their attendance is high and engagement is high, learning is high. Well, let's look at attendance, right? We know that we budget every year at 97%, and many schools and regions and districts would love to have that as the benchmark for attendance. We set that bar high and we hold to it. At this time last year, we were holding on to a 96.91% attendance rate, so just below 97%. Many of my colleagues who are administrators around the state are saying that they're seeing 20% drop off in attendance, 20% less ADA than they were getting at this time last year. That's why the governor budgeted this year on the hold harmless, meaning we'll give you the ADA that you collected last year. So Westlake, if we dropped off 5 points, 7 points, 10 points, it wouldn't feel so bad to drop 5 points knowing that people all around us are dropping double-digit points. Our attendance this year to date actually went up, right? We're at 98.41% attendance. So our students are showing up to school. Our teachers are doing a phenomenal job using the curriculum that they have and using the tools they have to design engaging environments. And we're seeing academic progress in things like the BPST. But it's not just kindergarten through third grade. So we have benchmarks that our students took last year, and we used those benchmarks to feed our report card last year. This year, they take the exact same benchmarks so we can track how many students got a 3, how many students got a 2, how many students got a 1 last year versus this year on the exact same assessments. One caveat I will give you here, these are the kindergarten through 8th grade reading benchmarks. There were 26 performed in this first chart on the left. We only have 20 in the second chart because 6 across grade levels, many grade levels have moved one of their standards to the second trimester because we were off to kind of a slow start this year because we were on distance learning. We understand that. However, it's not apples then to apples, but it's pretty darn close. you'll see that in kindergarten, for example, there are 2 reading assessments. In first grade, I think there's 3 reading assessments. But in 7th grade, there's only 1 reading assessment. So 26 assessments across K-8, literally, all 1,000 kids. I think there was something like 2,600 individual assessments that make up the data you see here. So out of those 2,600 assessments, 58.9% of the students last year scored a 3, meaning they met or exceeded the standard. Roughly 37% were progressing towards standard, which is appropriate. And then 3.5% did not meet the standard and were, receiving intervention and support. So, moving to distance learning using the exact same test, I think we're all assuming the number's going to be lower. We're not going to do as well. We're hearing it on the news that learning loss is massive. It's a big problem. We all need to race back and do what we used to do because that was a better version of school. I'm not saying this is a better version of school, but I am saying that the number of students who scored a 3 went up this year compared to last year. Part of it's the phonics. Part of it's how hard our teachers are working. You can see in the middle, obviously that number is smaller because some of the kids went up and some of the kids did go down. And we are concerned that we went from 3.5 to 5.8% scoring a 1 in reading on their grade level benchmark. And you'll see in our support structure what we're doing to help those kids out. But I gotta tell you, I think we have a lot to be proud of in the work that our teachers are doing. These are legitimate benchmarks that are in our Illuminate system. And this data, when it came out, I think we all stood back and thought, wow, maybe that wasn't what we expected. Now, you can't do reading without also doing math. So let's take a look at math. Again, this is that caveat was 26 reading assessments versus 20 reading assessments. This one here is 20 math assessments versus 19 math assessments. And again, let's take a look. 68.9% getting a 3. And this year, we would all assume it went down at least some. Instead, it actually went up. I can't really tell you why. I'm really kind of surprised. The work that the teachers are doing is just absolutely phenomenal. They are working their tails off. These are rubric and standard scored grades. So there's no margin of let's give it to them because things are hard. It's not that kind of grading. These are legitimately graded assignments. And then the same assignments we delivered last year, and we had more kids get a 3 this year than last year. And again, a squeeze out in the middle. And this one also slid on the bottom, but again by single digit, less than 2 points. So I think we have a lot to celebrate. I don't think this is the end of this data story. I think we have to analyze who went up, who went down, who stayed in the middle, and why. I'd like to analyze this by demographic data. I think that will tell some interesting stories as well. I think we've all heard some anecdotal stories about a straight A student who's kind of fallen off and not doing as well as they did last year. And we've heard those same stories about that kid who never engaged in school and now is doing all their work and doing really well. And we need to do some real analysis of those stories and see how it's going. But I think at initial blush, I think it's worth saying that Westlake Charter School is working incredibly hard on behalf of our students. And the outcomes are something to be celebrated. So after a year of distance learning, the learning loss exists. We're not ignoring that. I'm not trying to celebrate and say it's only all roses and sunshine, rainbows. But the learning loss is in single digits, which is great because it means our multi-tiered systems of support and our student support services teams can then identify children who need support and get right after it. What you're going to see when you talk about our supports, we're lucky that our teachers utilize that first tier and second tier of support in their classroom. Our teachers are brilliant at regrouping kids into small groups and giving them the support they need and retesting and reassessing to get them to where they, as opposed to saying, well, they didn't pass the test, let someone else come and take care of them. Because at that point, you wouldn't have enough student support services support providers to come in and do that, right? Our teachers take very seriously their charge of handling all the tiers in their classroom. I would like to say that our staff efforts have really resulted in high engagement. I talked about attendance and unimaginable outcomes. I couldn't have imagined our outcomes were as strong. And I would say that gains may be stronger in the second half of the data set due to increased comfort level with distance learning. What we're seeing is we started off slow. And I think that is why we're 7 points behind on the BPST, because what I see now is the ramp up. Now that we're getting comfortable with what we're doing, we're really getting traction with what we're doing. And one of the things we should learn from this is it was a little harder to hold a kid after school last year and say, hey, come here, let me help you with this work. But in this distance learning land where they're popping on screens and popping off screens, we're watching teachers small group in new ways and helping kids in different ways that may be something like we've never seen before. And I think it's worth recognizing that this platform, while it's not ideal for a lot of things, is helping in some ways that I hope we don't lose going forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about the supports that are in place, because at the last board meeting we talked about focusing on constantly getting better at what we're doing. And I want to make you aware of what we think we're doing, so at least you hear it from me. But before I dive into some of the supports, any questions, thoughts, or concerns about the data? Hope, I see your digital hand up.
It's not really a question. It's more of a notice wonder kind of thing. I do know that Twitter is not the best source of information, but I did get the chance yesterday to read a very interesting tweet, and it kicked off with how are schools going to adapt to those students who are in fact doing better in distance learning. And it was so interesting because it devolved into, well, my district is set up as all virtual academy. Certainly that will address it. And I was like, well, but then you're putting them in a different community. You're putting them in a different school. Like, that addresses nothing. Yeah. And I really thought of Westlake, because I know we'll find ways to take what we're learning now and to move it forward, to take this data and push it into how we're doing ROAR and everything else. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, John, that willingness to learn, and just the pride in reading that, knowing we would never tell our kids who are doing well right now in distance learning that they should find another school.
Yeah, I think what's really one of the big finds for us in this era is not the digital platform per se. It's the fluid, flexible grouping. Because we're very fluid right now because we're using digital, it's easy to pull 3 kids who need to catch up on a concept, get them caught up, and then just merge them back in. In the physical classroom, it was harder to do that because you're managing a whole classroom. Fluid, flexible grouping is really what's happening right now. It's what we've always wanted to do, but we're seeing it more readily happening because there's more flexibility in the day. There's more flexibility with time. And so we can't lose that. When we go forward, we come back to school, let's not lose that flexibility to do that. Shannon?
Yeah, I was going to say almost a similar thing, at least on this point, is that it's not quite as severe as like an undiagnosed learning disability necessarily, but it's almost like an undiagnosed learning preference, that no matter how flexy you make the space and all of those type of things that I think we do really well at Westlake, it's just different, right? And so maybe this is just a learning preference where certain types of learners thrive, and like you're saying, with the flexibility. And so the opportunities to figure out how to adapt that once we're back to some sort of normal or adapted normal on the other side of the pandemic. And then similar, I was thinking with like the attendance increases, also looking at what are the reasons kids typically miss school, and is it that they don't have transportation, and now it doesn't matter if a parent is stuck at a thing later or the parent is sick. And honestly, I think that's in some ways, I mean, this is the thing I'm hoping we institute more, is like, if you're kind of sick, then just work remotely, right? Like, I'm not sick enough to necessarily want to take a day off for like my sick day time, but I also don't want to go expose other people. So I just think, yeah, interesting lessons that, again, not worth going through a global pandemic to find out maybe, but hopefully that we can at least take with us to improve the comprehensive learning environment.
Yeah, it's interesting, Shannon, because one of the things I think we're learning about this distance learning platform is, again, it's not the digital, it's the students inherently have more agency and autonomy over their learning space, their learning time, and they're doing very well with it. I think when we give people responsibility for themselves, they flourish. We know that about adults. We know that about motivation theory for adults. But we rarely use that for children in settings where they're grouped together because we're trying to control kids instead of give them agency. And in this, they've been given so much agency that they're rising to the occasion. It's fascinating. How do we bring that back in the classroom? That is our charge. Yeah. Sorry, Ms. Patel?
you presented this to staff on Tuesday. I don't remember. Is today Saturday? Tuesday it was. And I really thought a lot about it. I thought about the phonics program that we piloted and are implementing in all the grades, all the lower grades. And what really came to my mind, though, was I got far enough down the rabbit hole that I wonder, and this is speculation, are these numbers a testament, both attendance and data, a testament to our SEL practices and how strong they are? Everything about social emotional learning speaks to that is priority before learning, and that is what allows learning. And it just made me wonder, all of our amazing teachers who have put that first and who have had days where they're like, math, let's talk about how we're feeling.
Yeah, it's a great call
and
out.
Is that why? And I think that's a piece of why. We'll never know how much.
Yeah. So. I think it'll show in our inter-school comparability when we are able to compare our data to other schools who maybe don't utilize those practices, and we'll see if schools with similar demographics, which we know of a few that look just like us, do or don't have similar outcomes, like on CASP this year, and maybe if they don't have similar SEL practices. So yeah, it's a great call out, Ashley. I agree. Okay, team. Any other questions, thoughts, or concerns on the data? Josh.
Yeah. Has anybody looked into, John? Because I know the school day itself is a little bit shorter on average, which allows more time on the back end, I would assume, for some of the smaller groups and the social emotional and, meeting with the teachers and getting that extra help. Is anybody looking into studying, that effect and that basically that form of education, leaving more time for, the students to operate individually or in small groups to solve problems or meet with the teachers versus just going to class, from 8:30 to 3? Kind of keeping a similar model. Is there any talk or studies going on about that?
Yeah, I have not come across that, but I'm very interested in what you're talking about. We actually, as the admin team, we're talking about pulling some kind of quantitative data about how many hours are our students utilizing the learning labs, the office hours after school. What kind of impact are those having? Hard to get our hands on it, but it'd be worth trying to at least quantify it. But yeah, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that.
Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Amy, would you tag that note at me? Because I'm going to bring that back to admin and say it came up with the board, because that'll kind of double down on the conversation we're having. What were you going to say, Josh?
Oh, the only other thing, I think that there's a group that we haven't recognized yet through all this, and that's the parents. And getting their buy-in on the distance learning. I think that's huge, and I think that's also evident in the numbers. And, I want to take a minute and just celebrate the parents. Yeah. It's tough for everybody, and you can't get these kind of numbers without having their buy-in. And I think that should be recognized as well.
Yeah, we are incredibly lucky to have such an engaged community. 100%. We know that to be true. 100%. Excellent. Ashley, is your digital hand up, or are you just high-fiving me? High-fiving. Okay, cool.
I forgot you have to take it digitally down, like in real life.
Okay, team. I just want to kind of walk you through, some of the things we're doing. I just want everyone to kind of recognize that. Remember the 3 tiers of the multi-tiered system support. Tier 1 are things we all get. Every student should have access to these practices. These are some of the common practices we should see. Grade span after grade span. We should all see these. Tier 2 is something that some kids get, right? Like, hey, they need a little extra support. It probably happens in the general education classroom, and it probably happens from the general education teacher, but there's strategies and support that are for some students. And then tier 3 are for a few students, right? There's systems that help out a few students. I think until you go through the list, you may not realize, gosh, how many organized structures are really in place that create this fabric that leads to the data that we're seeing. So, I'll kind of walk through, like, these are mostly things that you would see in a classroom that are on the academic side that create high levels of engagement. We talk again about engagement equals the pathway to learning. So Project GLAD, which you have all supported as a board, our new phonics program they all have access to, that our teachers are utilizing universal design for learning around engagement and access. Like when you look at UDL, whether you're an expert in UDL or not, like if you walk into any Westlake teacher classroom, you see lots of effort on engaging students and creating access at the appropriate level for students, and that is textbook UDL. So these are things that all students get. The teaching is no longer me standing at the front of the podium and just spouting off what I think I know and you taking copious notes. Our teachers are experts at crafting entry points for all students in the classroom, creating access and engagement, and that's through kind of a UDL lens. We have grade level support, grade level scope and sequence with prioritized academic standards. Our staff mapped out their whole year, as they do, knowing that the pace was going to be slower, but then having to weed things out that maybe were pet projects they love doing, but they just don't have time to do it this year because they want to make sure our student outcomes are still on point. More so than ever, small groups are happening kindergarten through 8th grade. I mean, all the way across the board, kids are getting into small groups and getting the small group instruction that they need, and that distance learning kits are actually a part of this tier 1, we think. Giving students hands-on manipulatives and things to use is really a part of this high engagement that we think we're using in distance learning. But on the SEL side, morning meeting and advisory, right? We have an SEL team now of teachers who are creating these tier 1 implementation supports for social emotional learning. I mean, we have a whole team generating content for our whole staff to use. We have one-on-one check-ins with students all across the grade levels. I mean, you pick a grade level and there are more than handfuls of students who are getting one-on-one check-ins, not just with their teachers, because many teachers are doing one-on-ones with kids, but they're also having support providers come in as well from Student Support Services. These after-school clubs, knowing that over 150 students accessed after-school clubs, that is an SEL protective factor if I've ever heard one. I mean, it's the whole point we have sports, during the regular year. This is what we're doing right now. And of course, things like Go Guardian and Gaggle. If you sit in my office, you recognize how important these tools are. You recognize that we get alerts if a student types in words like suicide or drug use or particular activities. Now, these are tier 1 social emotional screeners where we're always looking all the time if student health is going to be a factor. And these fish bowls that we hold in the middle school, I'm so glad we brought those back because these are inter-advisory, right? They're a mix of kids. They get to be in a room and share out loud things that they would like to see make our school better. You as a board asked, hey, what are you guys doing to make sure kids are doing well? And how's the data looking? Tonight I brought you the data, and I think these are some of the tier 1 things that are making that data what it is. Now, tier 2, we have during the daily instruction, right? We have small group reteach. I told you flexible groupings happening more so than ever before. These reteach groups for phonics are very powerful. Our instructional aides, and I'll talk about this in a moment, are getting professional development every single week. Our IAs aren't just here to help make copies and cut out shapes and staple them together. These people are helping with instruction at every grade level. And after school, we have ROAR after school. It's going very well. It's been very successful. Every single teacher has office hours for children. We have virtual learning lab that's a drop-in now. And tons of kids are using the virtual learning lab. This is a practice I hope we never lose. I hope we always have the opportunity for kids to say, I need help. School's out. I want help. That virtual learning lab has been great. We've started our coping skills lunch bunch groups. This is so powerful. Now we're doing it digitally. We have 2 counseling trainee interns from the University of San Francisco. So that means we have 3, more or less 3 full-time counselors now. Our counselor, Mrs. Cravoy, plus 2 trainee interns who are doing a lot of great work with groups. We have counselor one-on-one check-ins at every grade level. We have counseling groups, and we have parent-requested counseling. So parents can get right on the distance learning website, and click on Cravoy's counseling alert and ask for counseling support for their kids. So this is tier 2, you guys. I mean, and the list could have been longer, but I wanted to make sure you knew that we're not just a great school because we have great people and they're all very kind and love children. We have systems upon systems that are supporting our kids academically and social emotionally. Now we have one-on-one intensive services in tier 3. We have targeted phonics support, as well as the virtual support with our IAs, ed specialists, our teachers on special assignment. These are all one-on-one individuals. If you saw the lists, and maybe I should quantify it for us at another meeting, but if you saw the number of kids that got one-on-one supports from either a teacher on special assignment, from MTSS or student support services, ed specialists, our counselors, there's a ton of one-on-one that happens in tier 3. I think maybe some institutions use tier 3 a little differently. We are very, very inclined to allow for tier 3 escalation through the proper process. Our kids get the support that they need, and our kids are very successful for it. We have one-on-one counseling. We have these care cards where students are able to develop a card with reminders of how they should be able to help themselves during stressful emotional times. We have a ton of these floating around. Typically they're actual physical cards, and now they're digital. And these are things that for students who are getting daily one-on-one check-ins, we're always referring to those cards. Hey, did you use your card today? We have safety plans and risk assessments that are conducted as needed. These are all tier 3 social emotional supports. And whether we want to believe it's happening or not, I'm here to tell you, as an administrator in this office, a week doesn't go by without many of these factors coming up and us saying, hey, let's make sure that child's getting what they need. We're lucky to have a great team all the way through, from instructional aides to teachers to the administrators to the parents. But on this piece right here, there's not a more important piece than tier 3 SEL for the health and safety of our kids. And I think our team does a fabulous job of that. These are just a couple of professional development pieces I want you to know about. Our MTSS team, they meet monthly with every subject area or grade level team, meaning that the MTSS team comes out to your 3rd grade teacher's team and checks in and says, hey, what kids are you guys worried about this month? Who's on your radar? Oh, that person? Okay, I got data on that person. I'm going to check in with that person. Like, that team goes out to the grade level teams systematically and says, who do you need help serving? Like, no one's an island, no one's alone. Twice monthly, our teachers obviously receive professional development. We all know that. But our instructional aides are receiving weekly PD right now. They've recently been trained in phonics. They've been trained in Google Classroom. They've been trained in all these practices that are helping them help our kids. And on the SEL side, our SEL team are building all these resources and allowing all the teachers to use those. Our SEL staff meeting check-ins to build skills. So we're doing check-ins to build skills. And we have a positive parenting workshop coming up. So those are just some items. Oh, that's right. And we have this wonderful monthly Counselor's Corner newsletter. I don't know if you've seen it, but we all rave about those resources. So I wanted you to hear about some data, but I think that a lot of what I just quickly referenced is why we have the data we have, because it's not just about our amazing staff, but the systems that our staff engage in to produce results for our kids. So any questions, thoughts, or concerns about that, team? I know there's a lot of my voice tonight. Okay. If there's other data that you'd like to see, I mean, I would love to go find it for you. So please let me know. Impact, I know we're working on some data together, and we have progress report 2 data coming out, and around trimester, at the end of trimester 2, I think I will pull more data, more benchmark data for us, and I'll bring that back to the board if you'd like me to.
That sounds like a great plan, John. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Future agenda items. Do we? I don't know that we necessarily know of anything specifically for February. I'm sure we'll discuss what return to school information we might have then.
And the CSSP.
Yes. Is there any other items that the board is wishing to see on the February agenda? Okay, then, seeing none, we'll move on to reflection. I'll do it based off my screen, I guess. So, Vasa, you'll be first, and then Steve.
I love being first. I think I think it was my reflection is that I'm really energized by the enthusiasm around the high school. I know we all went around and celebrated first, and then John brought it up, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the high school." I mean, the pieces that are coming into play are really cool for our school and our community, and it was really. The thing that stuck out to me was how many teachers have applied. It said 30 history teachers already. I think that's a testament to just Westlake's reputation in the edu world. And so I'm excited about that staff and what they're going to look like, and the type of people that are going to build the curriculum and instruction as well. And that's my celebration.
Thanks, Vasa. Steve, and then Sean.
Yeah, I'll give a quick shout out and celebration on this last piece that John just went through on the tiers, and really just Miss Cravoy and the work she's done. Again, as John just mentioned, around the counselor's corner and those pieces. I mean, here is a prime opportunity where maybe students could feel disconnected from school, and there's just a really big push to make sure that students are still engaged and connected with school. And I think that was represented well tonight. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Sean, and then Shannon.
Well, I just didn't want it to slip under the radar that on consent, we actually appointed a new committee member, which is always exciting. So, yay for new committee members.
Sean, you stole mine. It's okay. I'll come up with something. Shannon, and then Nancy.
Yeah, my bad, because my committee, and I did not say that in our committee updates. I kind of just want to celebrate all, like, this whole meeting in general and all the hard work that you all have been doing over the past year, because I feel like, again, this week in the world has been hard, and seeing more racially motivated violence, but it's also just, I feel like it's been hard in my life, like, personally and professionally, and so I am happy to receive any positive updates. And so hearing everyone's celebrations, seeing that there's actually numbers moving in an upward trajectory from the students, progress on the high school, both in terms of interest and actually like physically. And so all of that is just, and then also bringing the equity lessons to this board, and like seeing how that's getting like filtered for all of the appropriate audiences and the context. Again, contextualizing, right? Who what the spaces are. So I'm just really appreciative of that, and appreciate all the work that you're all doing. So thanks.
Thanks, Shannon. Nancy, and then Josh.
So I'd like to just piggyback on what Shannon has just shared, because as I was listening to the identity session part of the meeting, all I could do was reflect on where this country might be if we had started that conversation 25 years ago. And so I'm so grateful that we're on the forefront of that. I always think that California is a bit of a bubble. We are absolutely in a bubble. But the more educated we make our students and the people around us, they will travel to other corners of the world, and because they're explorers, and I love that. And we're doing our part to make the world a better place, and I love being a part of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. Josh, and then Jed.
Yeah, I just wanted to reflect on, the amount of support that we have available. And John, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick. Do we still have spots open for BASE if people need that?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, we had 3 new students join BASE this week, and we think next week we're going to have record high numbers, but there are still slots available. So if there's somebody out there who needs a place for their child to safely, be engaged in distance learning, please use BASE as a resource.
Perfect. And then if you wouldn't mind, John, one more time, would you throw out the information for Joey's Food Locker, just in case anybody needs something there as well?
100%. 100%. I mean, Joey's Food Locker is located on Natomas High School's campus on Fong Ranch Road. If anybody wants to drop anything off at Joey's Food Locker, you can do so. I think this Friday they're doing donations. But if you would like to access food from Joey's Food Locker, you can go to natomasiunified.org and go to the website for Joey's Food Locker. And if your family is in need, they certainly will be able to help.
Perfect. Thanks, John.
Jed, and then Ashley.
I just really appreciated that presentation on learning loss or lack thereof, and how much on top of the story you are, John, and the whole team is, and you are finding interesting ways to understand with limited / different / new ways of gathering data using it. So thank you very much for that presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley, and then John. And hey, John, while Ashley reflects, can you just double check that we don't have any public comments? Thanks.
I feel like this meeting had so much good stuff. I feel like this meeting was like a little reminder for everyone and a little peek behind the curtain of like, look at all the things that are happening. Maybe you access one of them and there's this whole entire list. I loved that I said something about SEL, and then John, you went into every single tier and listed out every single one. Had no idea those slides were there. So I think that is my reflection, is that I got to then see all of them, which was just very confirming for me on my presumptions.
Cool. Hope, we do have one public comment. The subject line is public comment, discussion item, academic and SEL support. So it's on this last item.
It's perfect timing. Would you mind reading it in just so we have it?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind at all. This comes from Carissa Richards Johnson. It reads, Westlake's work supporting the social emotional learning needs of students has been phenomenal. Given the challenges of distance learning, especially the extended physical separation from peers and teachers, SEL has never been so important. Strategies such as the Counselor's Corner newsletter, videos, and support from Mrs. Cravoy, and the way Westlake teachers have incorporated SEL lessons into the virtual classroom show how intensely aware the Westlake team is of all the students' needs. Plus, Mr. Lockteff is really rocking this SEL area in his classroom with the way he carefully guides his students through social emotional lessons. The whole Westlake team is helping so many students today and well into their futures. Our family is thankful to be at a school that truly values the needs and health of the whole child. Thank you, Carissa Richards Johnson.
Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. I was worried we hadn't heard from her yet, so I'm glad we have a comment. I always appreciate and value her thoughts and opinions. So thanks again. My reflection is, yes, I'll piggyback off of Sean's. We always are looking for committee members. And so if anyone is out there watching and is interested in possibly participating on a committee, shoot an email to admin@westlakecharter.com. We'd love to have you. But I'm also going to celebrate that this board did approve 2 pretty large pieces for the high school tonight. And we didn't have any discussion on them or presentation, but it's a big deal that we've approved the graduation requirements and the MOU to do that pathway work. And so I just want to celebrate that and reflect on the big things that really are happening for the high school and how much hard work is going into that as well behind the scenes. So with that, John, unless you have anything else, I say we go ahead and adjourn at 8:51, which is really early for us. So yay.
Thank you, everybody.
Watch, Josh. I saw that. Do you have anything else, John?
I'm good. My reflection would have been that I love hearing the voice of this board. I spoke a lot tonight, but I love it when I hear your voices. So thank you all for participating.
I'm so sorry. I made the public comment your reflection in my head. I'm so sorry.
It's quite all right. It's good. Let's call it adjourn at 8:51. I'll say goodnight. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
All right. Okay.